right. All right, so do I start reading now?
It is all yours. You got
All
10,
right,
15 minutes and take your time and just enjoy. I'm going to mute myself, which you know is hard for me because you know I'm a talker. But yes, take it over. It's all yours. We're right
All
here.
right, I'm going to
Make
read
sure
from
you look.
my idea is to read from my first book, first chapbook, second, third, and the new poems. And the second and third chapbook are the new ones that are coming out, but I wanted to read everything. So this one is from, like my bookmarks, my first book. So the first, and I'm going to read two poems out of this. And these were written before 2016, and so they're probably within from 2010 to 2016, somewhere in that. So sorry. Asleep but not oblivious. Out this tiny window there is water, intense in its reflection. A mirror of grand illusion seeps upward like a maiden. She steps, naked, pixelated, onto the shore, her body an exotic aquarium. Captured, a sunfish swims behind eyes. Her whisper is inaudible. Placing his hand into hers, they both dissolve. To watch with the intent of a blind man is to pretend things do not become habit. Reality is reciprocating. Blink, wet the eyes, see clear. And this one, thank you. Sorry, I have to pause. This one is a cento, and I took it from lines of other poems and made my own poem. And especially when I have writer's block, I like to do this because it just kind of helps open my mind up. So, this is called Cento, Self-Examine. Definition of terms: 1, turn to open. 2, insert bomb here. 3, don't have lingering doubts. They knew what they wanted. Beasts and violins shall be released against last will and testament. But tonight no music will serve the happy majority. And that's that poem. All right. And now here's my little chapbook that was published last March. And I'm going to read a bit of a long poem. There's 2 long poems in the beginning and then some 8-line poems. So, oh, here it is. All right, so the poem I'm reading from is called The House in the Attic. And it's a bunch of parts and pieces of a poem. And I thought of when you go to an attic, there's never anything specific. It's a bunch of different things. So that's where I got the idea for this poem. I breach into small occasions. Little lifeless insects collect to rid themselves of soul, passing around the poison pellet for absolution. The ants build their bodies into monuments so that the next generation can study such sacrifices in order to understand their survival. And that's that poem. Thank you. And I don't do much humorous poetry because, like, I'm very serious when it comes to poetry, and I'm like really OCD. But I have a few, like 3, and so this is one of them. I figured I'd read. It's called "Finding Myself to Return." I leave a paper trail to find myself back. On each piece, I jot down directions. One may get lost by the wind and will need to find its way back. So there's that one. And this one is kindly grotesque. The reason I read it because Christopher Bursk, who's a big poet, he really liked it and said a lot of things about it. So I figured it was okay to read. So just a warning. It's called The Pregnancy of Flies. The yellow-bellied dead have soaked up the sun. Their stomachs are pregnant with maggots and dressed in flies. Their wings glint in the beams. hundreds of tiny mirrors. The corpses are heavenly creatures rotting. And one moment, as I ask my husband if he can go get me something to drink, go get me, because my mouth is so dry. I'm nervous. All right, so, and that's ampersand. And now on to the cell phone. All right. Nope, nope. Sorry. All right, so this is the one that's coming out the 16th, and it's called A Child Growing Inside the Mothering Womb, and it's 11 poems, and it's coming out on ebook first. Eventually, it will be a real book, like a paperback book or whatever, but we're getting the details worked out on that. So, and it's free. And how Ghost City Press works is you can donate if you want to, and if you don't want to, that's okay also. I just want everyone to get it. So it comes out the 16th, and I've been posting stuff on my page and everything. So I'm going to read, and Sandra and a couple people like this, but I told Sandra I was reading this one because she liked it. It's called Winter Poem. Mouth open, letting snow cover my burial plot of words, and fingers too cold to dig the tongue out. Frozen corpse, the stature of teeth chirping a ruptured poem. And there's that one. And I'm going to take a drink, so sorry, I'm not trying to be rude. And I spilt it all over me. All right. This one, I'll read this one. Sorry, I had like memorized what I was gonna read, and then once I look at it and I'm nervous, I've forgotten, so I'm just gonna fly with it. This one is called The Color of Wasp Bodies Cover My Blanketed Mind. The stinger erupts as sound hurtled behind my eyes, because sometimes my poems collapse at the end. Veins burst. Blood rushes into the dams of my pupils. Their structure falls apart, broken rafts, fox hopes, and wings of wasp, paper thin but metallic and light, are the same lies my verses will feed you, edible for only a time until you realize not all things were birthed from wombs, but some delivered by maggots. And there's that poem. And this one I'm going to read, and I'm really glad people understand this poem and don't think it's homophobic, because one, I'm gay, but it's just a lot of like what I read, because I'm gay, is the homophobia and the transphobia and all the phobias and everything. So I wrote this poem, and it's published in the Ethel Zine, and it had come out, I think, in September. But it's called We Seated Him Holy. You'll find him in a chair sequenced, gay as vandalism. We used white rags and smoke to purify him, to bleach the sin, to poach the black resin from the heart skin, to bring him right by rules of man. His arms and ankles tied crosswise, the naked body, a rosary bead tucked in each wound. And that's that poem. And then I want to read one because hopefully, like all you, I hate Donald Trump. And so I wrote this poem. And I wrote this poem after he pardoned the war criminal who killed all the innocent people. And I believe he videotaped it and was bragging about it. And it was very disturbing. And it disturbed me because he should not been pardoned. It'd been different if it was, an accident or something, but he purposely did this and then purposely bragged about it. So I wrote this, and it's called Fuck Donald Trump. Morning waits lying in the weeds, a sniper aimed impatient to impeach freedom from thought, to pardon itself, anti-war criminal. Your war hand holds grenades, not peace, not softness, but explosions. Notice what you've done, disguising what love is, love has done, has come from. What love is love anymore? I touch my forehead as a decree. You saturate yourself in a smokescreen. And there's that poem. And now I'm going to go over to the one that it's being published by Kevin Ridgway with his Dark Heart Press in the summer. There's no official date yet. It's just in the summer, and it's called and it's going to be one long poem, and so it's like a memoir of sorts. Like 80% of it's true, 20% of it is because I'm a poet. Um, so I'm going to read part one, and it's a bit long, but and it's jumbled. It's a bunch of different images, and the second part and so on is more whole. But I figured, why not read it? So it's called Burning His Matchstick Fingers, His Hair Went Up Like a Wick. I have found terribler things in words. They've forced me to realize blood pools in my heart and stagnates. Measure me to the dead, the similarities are uncanny. You won't recognize the life from the embalming fluid. Give me more than rejections. Thank you, but no thanks. I am neither an accomplishment nor a recognition. In the order of beginning, I wait, but in determination. Lost in the atmosphere, wanting the flames to undress my body, and ashes cover my mother's face, I want her to remember a beautiful son. Imagine being sacrificed, but instead of red, smoke pours out, smelling of incense, and how gorgeous the cloud would form. We comprehend the smallness, the ivory cut from the horn fitting in the palm, yet how long did it take the carcass to convert to the same size? When I killed my only deer, I cried. It wasn't that she was dead, but alive, observing her blood. She fled from her eyes. My father told me to shoot her again, not evil, but love. The second bullet would be peace, where the first forgot its duty. I curve lines to the east, hoping they become less human, and build a church from poems so God will understand how religion can congregate into a manuscript and be written by men who have no factions to worship him. I regain consciousness from this delusion. To confess an atonement reality is suspicious. And yes, if you believe God formed man from dirt and Eve from our rib, then eat the apple I give. Let's bind ourselves in such sin as two men, two lovers, destined together in this unholy regime. Come unwrapped and exposed, praying in a religious tongue that you will take me into the peril of the unknown. Your hands bound the misinterpretations. Let me be as I was born. And that is that poem, or that part of the poem. Thank you. And now I'm going to read some new poems, maybe. This one I wrote was in the beginning of everything going on, and when we were fired from our job due to COVID-19 and all that stuff. And so the reality of I'm not going to be able to pay for anything. Someone just asked me, do you have an event tonight? Yes. One moment. Yes, I'm on now. It was Doc. So, okay, sorry. So I don't like to be rude. So I wrote this because, it's like everything is going hectic and chaotic, and, our government people could give two about us. So hopefully this is right. Yep. All right. So he wanted the info, and luckily I had it copy and pasted already, so I just sent it to him. So this is where this is the one I wrote. It's called When the Street Becomes Our Home. I wonder when the stock market will so violently crash, causing bank accounts to pull back and swell. Whose life will the tsunami cleanse? Who will drown? I lie in bed and calculate ways I can't pay my bills. What will be taken first? The house, the car, the knife I place on my wrist. Each item checked off and carried out until the only thing left is my name, though surely the government will erase that too. The street will bleed my feet, the cold will chap my skin, and who will share their sense to a world of beggars when we are all fighting for the corner to sleep, for the cardboard box, for the dry spot? And that's that poem. And so, oh, I copied the wrong one. Well, I'll read this last because I think I had like 20 minutes. Oh, Charlotte, hey, thank you. Sorry, I didn't know you were here. I only see 5 people at the top row. Charlotte's amazing. If anyone doesn't know Charlotte, follow Charlotte. She's pure brilliance and super smart. And I'm so honored you came to my reading. So, all right. So this one, part of it's published in Farrell magazine with Beth Gordon. And so I'll read just a little bit and then that'll be done. I won't read no more because I think it was like I had like 20 minutes. So, and I'm doing good. Okay. This one, oh, and this poem is in reference. I wanted like all the bad stuff. The COVID-19 was really horrible, and even if you didn't pass away, you suffered a lot mostly, or you didn't even know you had it. But I wanted to make it beautiful, and I wanted to make it like an art piece. And I don't mean that rudely when I say art piece. I mean that as a compliment. So look at me talking. That's what I gotta remember, not talk so fast. And I'm gonna get a drink real fast. All right. It's called The Quarantine and the Corona Flowers. The sickness flowers. Death looms over every beautiful thing. Homes overgrown, sprouting seeds, drifting with wind over fields. New flowers arise, germinating beautiful petals but weak stems, eradicating smells each flower and watches their lungs wither. They fall 2, 7, 13. The plague is polluting the air. Each toxic breath determines a second-guessed inhale. Scent breaches the nostrils, veering past sinuses. It disintegrates body into mulch, rooting fear deeper within our skin, a tattoo of endangerment. Corpses lie in mass graves, the hillside beds unnamed faces. Mouths hang open like caverns, eyes glisten like poorly formed diamonds. Their fingers count the hours since the outbreak, soon bones will build caskets. I want to incubate the infected and settle them in vases, present each one a new alias, represent them as beautiful instead of cursed and dying, have them set in art studios painted on canvases. His lungs filled and he drowned lying in the hospital bed. The blood seeped out the broken aquarium of his mouth. The doctors turned their faces down and collected each medical tool like a dead fish. All right, that's all I read of that one. and and the and the idea of like the hillside was where you read and even in New York and stuff, they had so many pass away, they just dug holes and buried all their dying in, and that really affected me. That was really sad. And then the person about on the hospital bed, that is a true person. Unfortunately, I never got his name, so I don't know who it was, but he was in the hospital on the bed, and the doctors were literally there trying to save him, and all of a sudden blood started pouring out of his mouth and his nose, and he passed away. So I don't have many people in here in this poem, but I wanted to get a few that I've seen that have been specific and just write about them in a beautiful way. And I know it's probably not beautiful that he died, but I wanted to make it like with the aquarium, because when you think of aquariums and you think of the fish, and it's a beautiful thought, or at least I love aquariums and I love to watch fish. So that was my go. And I'm getting a little emotional, sorry. But my go was to bring the horrific, and even though I write it about the sadness, I want it to be beautiful, and I want them to be remembered, because there's so many people out here that don't care, and they still think it's a hoax and fake and all that stuff. So I just wanted to make them beautiful. And I think that's all the poems I'll read, and everything. Oh, also, I hope this is okay. My first book. If anyone wants it, DM me. I have lots of copies. Like I was I was lectured for like 30 minutes the other day, because I really don't like to put a price on it, because right now we all live in a world where we can't afford our bills and to eat and everything. So just DM me, we'll work something out what you can afford if you want it. So it's and it's 158 pages, so you'll have plenty to read. And unfortunately, ampersand, you can only get through the publisher, because he only sent me one copy, and it's $14, but it includes shipping and handling. So and whatever we work out with the price, I've been selling for $10, just so you know. But if you can't afford that, that's cool. But it includes shipping and handling. I'm not gonna be like this much plus $4 for shipping and handling. So all of it will be one price. All right, I'm not very good at promoting myself, so. All right, now back to you guys. Thank you.
That was awesome. Oh my gosh.
Thank you
I hope
so much,
I didn't read
Jojo.
too fast. I apologize.
No.
I'm so nervous anyhow, because I wanted it to be really good reading, and then like I get so nervous, and then I talk 100 miles an hour.
I talk fast too. Don't feel bad.
Thank you, Charlotte.
You did great.
That
I know
was great.
you were nervous. You said you were nervous going on, but you did fantastic. It was
Yeah,
lovely.
you did.
And
Thank you.
I want you to hear all of the comments.
I know I was so I could see some of them pop up every once in a while, like Charlotte. I've seen hers, and of course I talked about her because I didn't know her until like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I was trying to find more poets, because like once a month I go and I add 5 or 6 more poets, because I'm obsessed with poets. And I found her, and then she happened to have a reading, and so I was like, oh, this is so cool. And literally, she is a genius. She's so smart, and it just floored me. And then I spoke to her, I messaged her, and I'm always worried about messaging women poets. I'm not trying to be rude to none of you, but there's a bunch of creepy people. And I read all the time, creepy people. And so I always try to be like, hi, I'm a poet. I love your poet. I'm gay. I'm married to a dude. Just so you know, I want to talk about poetry. So, and I mean, I try to be respectful. So I try to put it out there, because a lot of people don't look at your profile before they check your message. So they're like, oh God, this, weirdo is like, oh, I love your poetry so much. And so I try to like put it out there that I'm a weirdo, but not in a bad way. But yeah, her poetry, and I have it posted. I don't post many things, but I posted it because she's smart and she's fun, and her reading was great. And like, I know most of you on here, sorry, don't think I'm just like flabbergasting all over her or whatever. But like, I don't know, she like, every one of her poems just hit me.
Now, Charlotte wrote here, he is really lying right now.
Oh, no, I'm not. I'm not. It absolutely, like I love all you that I know, and I'll learn, and the others I'll get to know and everything. But like, it took her like 6 years to write her book, and she went with I'm sorry, Charlotte, I'm gonna butcher this, but like the chromosomes and XY and all that stuff, and made them into like real people, and wrote and everything. Oh, just, it's so beautiful. And I want her book so bad, and I'm gonna have to wait to get it, unfortunately, because I'm poor. But as soon as I can, I'm buying your book. Like, and sorry everyone else. Hopefully you don't unfriend me later, because but I love you too, Megan, and Sarah,
our
and
inspiration.
everyone. But like, I've talked to you guys for a long time, so you know how much I love you. All right, I'm shutting up.
You said what Charlotte said, let's do a book exchange. I'll message you about it later.
All right, that'd be
She
awesome.
said thank you. But that, I think that's you're speaking to the reality that poetry and poets, we write in solo so often, and it's wonderful to meet kindred spirits. And I think there's a synergy that happens when we do have a chance to connect, and that is so important, and even more so right now. So when I first started doing these book launches, I didn't really know how many people had been affected. And then, I've actually met poets that I didn't know about, and it's been, an amazing experience and a lifesaver. But I want to put this I want to shine some light on you, because you really do need to see what people were saying here, JoJo.
Yeah, I know, but I'm never good at that part. I love complimenting other people, like Clayton, where I was talking about him. You happened to leave, and I started talking about you, Clayton, about your artwork and your poetry and how magnificent it is and everything.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So I'm really bad at taking compliments, but I worship. Some of my poems were not about religion, and I'm not really religious, but when it comes to poetry and poets, they're like my gods and who I worship. I worship poets.
Well, I think that love of language, but so, what Christy wrote, sunfish swim behind eyes, that she really liked that line. Karen wrote, I'm loving John's commentary between the poems. Megan wrote, great title. And actually, great title came up several times. And I think that's probably something, because I saw that Ruth wrote that too. She also wrote, these short poems are like sharp punches. And I think that's a perfect way to put that.
May I say something real fast about my titles?
Yes, because I want to ask you, how do you?
I'm horrible I hate writing titles. And honestly, I rarely read a title in a poem. Like, I read the poem and then I have to remember, oh yeah, there's a title, let me go read it real fast. So I'm really, and it's funny because a lot of people love my titles, but I hate titling poems. Like, that's usually either the very last thing I do or the first thing I do. I write a title and then I write a poem, and most of the time they don't interlink at all. But yeah, so yeah, titles and me are. But I also think I don't want to title it something like okay, I'm not trying to be boring. Like, I want to go and make it like really interesting. And some of my poems have the really interesting title, and the poem has nothing to do with the title. But the title was really cool. All right.
Well, and I was going to say, that was something else that Ruth said, it made her want to go look at her titles and work harder. So it's interesting, because I saw a lot of your titles as adding a whole nother dimension. And it is true that oftentimes as readers, we're going to work a little harder to tie that in. So you might get some unexpected things that people come up with. So that's interesting. John Burrows said, great reading, John. Sorry I couldn't hang out for open mic. I have a family Zoom tonight at 7:30. Cheers.
I don't think he's here either anymore, but I'm so glad he came. We talked, and I was like, you got to be there. And he's like, well, and I was like, no, you got to be there. And I was like, because he came to Sandra's, and the whole time he was hiding, and I was like, and you can't hide. I was like, you got to, video. And he's like, but I look horrible. And I was like, I don't care. So I was really honored he came and then showed himself. It made me happy.
And Clayton said how often I have started with the title. So a lot of people, and that is an interesting topic to ask, poets, did you start with the title or did the title come afterwards? And you said for a lot of that's the last thing. There was another question in here, so I want to make sure that I don't miss this. Let me be as I was born. So quite a few lines stood out to everybody. Measure me to the dead. Wow, the language in these poems is so pointed and exquisite. That came from Karen. You're doing well listening. Yeah, that's good. Because I was going to say, JoJo, when I go over this, I can mute you.
Oh yeah, I'm biting my tongue.
No, I want you just to hear this though, because I think it's good feedback to know what resonates with people. And I think oftentimes we don't really get the same kind of chance to dialogue with one another. And everybody, feel free to unmute and jump in if you have a question for JoJo. But right now I'm just going through the chat section, making sure that we do that. The first bullet, forgot its duty. Every line is so rich. That came from Karen. Chrissy said, forgot its duty. Wow. So that resonated with several different people. Charlotte, I wish I knew which poem. And Clayton also said, love it, love that poem. Love it. So it must have been after When the Street Becomes Our Home. What a powerful title. So that might have been in response to that poem. Train Ride Elsewhere is terrific. There was something I was going to say about kind of how a theme that I was seeing in your work is that you tend to flip things on their head, or in some way find the beauty in something that might otherwise not be seen in the same way. And it was kind of surprising details that you drew out. And I'm sure other people were noticing that same thing, but it was, some of them even sounded like magical realism. There was an element of realism, but then also something magical or was actually happening or was just underneath the surface. So from Christy, she wants to know, what is your writing process? Because you said you're super OCD.
Mm-hmm. So I have different writing processes, if that makes sense. Sometimes it all like just flood to me. And so I write it down, and I write it on my cell phone on the email draft first. And then I go to my laptop and I pull it out from the email draft and I put it in Word. And then I edit more. I edit and edit and edit and edit and edit. But or like I'll just be like, I really need to write a poem, because that's how I function. I can't live without writing. So I write and I find a word. I like ramble in my head and I find a word or a line, and then I work from that. Mm-hmm. Or it all comes to me, or I watch something. And sorry, I knew that. I figured this question is going to be asked, and I'm butchering it.
No, you're not. You're fine.
But I edit, like I have in the long poem that's going to be the chapbook in the summer. I have a part in there where I say my head is like an auditorium, and I have like a million poets in there, and I'm always editing and revising as I write. And I write a line, and I edit the line, and then another line will come, and I'll edit that line as I'm writing and over. And then when I'm done with the poem, and usually I get done with the poem because I don't want to add any more to it because I'm afraid I'll ruin it. And so I'm like, all right, this poem's done enough. And then I go over and I start just reading it and reading it and reading it and editing and adding here and there, taking away. And then I'm like, all right, this one's done on my cell phone. And then I go and I take it, and I might wait a few days. And then I take it from my email and put it in Word, and then I'll read it and read it and read it and read it and read it some more. So I think, is that a good answer to that?
Yeah.
Okay. I've never been asked that question, and I knew because I've been in Zoom readings, and usually everyone asks that, and I'm like, I'm going to be asked that, and so what do I say? And really, it's I'm a weirdo. Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that it's the main thing is just what your process is, and just being true to that. Mm-hmm. Because some people have very specific ways of approaching poems, and some people have a different way. But it's interesting that you start on your phone and then send it to Word, to your computer.
Also, I like chaos too. I write better in chaos than I do silence, because my life has always been chaotic in some term or form. And so like I'll have music on, or the TV, or just the dogs be barking or aggravating me because
I was gonna say, you can't catch quiet at your house. You got two
not
critters.
a moment.
No.
So, and then like I like writing at night also, like when it's dark. Like I'll go to sleep at like 6, 7 in the morning. I wake up like 2 or 3 in the afternoon if I'm lucky. I sleep that long. But I like writing at night too, because the night is, I don't know, I like writing in chaos, but at the same time, the night is better because it's peaceful. So I like the peaceful atmosphere with the chaotic undertone.
So, question from Megan: do you find that your poems start with an image, an idea, a sound, etc.? What is the initial spark?
Images. I love images. Like throughout my poems, images, metaphor, simile, all that. I like writing. Because poetry for the longest time was my only friend. I have a poem talking about how poetry is my lover. And so, and it was the only thing there for the longest time. And so, I like being able to take something and then making it even bigger. Like sometimes a word, like I'll choose a specific word because even though maybe no one knows, but if you look at the definition of that word, there's a whole nother world. So that one word is a poem in to itself. So I love imagery and I love forming and making things into other things, and I tell people too, don't read my poems how I wrote them, because some people be like, I just can't understand this poem. I'm like, well, don't understand it in the sense of how you think I wrote it. Let it in like envelope you and see it how it wants to be seen by you.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Clayton wrote quite an extensive process when you were talking about like how you go about writing. The question from Kieran is, how did you pick the people who've published your books?
I stalk them and then I harass them.
This is not a recommended procedure, people.
My first book, I do all the process. They're all different. I didn't stalk anyone. I might have harassed some people a little bit, but the trainride elsewhere, I sent poems to Fanny Howe. She's amazing. If it wasn't for her, I don't think I'd be here right now, because she opened the door big time. So, and if no one knows Fanny Howe, just type her name in, Google. She has a million different things. But and I was shocked when she wrote back, and then we've corresponded for years and years and years. She actually did a little review for my new chapbook coming out, the Mothering Womb one. So and she mailed them to Bill Corbett, who passed away, and that's why you can't get them at stores no more. You got to get my book through me. But he wrote, and I didn't know nothing about it. He wrote me and told me he wanted to publish my book, and so I was like a little girl. I'm not trying to be, rude or sexist or anything. Just little girls tend to get more excited about stuff. So I was running around screaming, hollering, like 30 miles away could hear me. And then 6 years later, because that's how long it took me to publish my first book from the time he asked, because I was super OCD and it's my first book and I want it perfect, Trainride where it came out. So 2010-ish, he contacted me. 2016 it came out. So, and then ampersand I wrote. I sent I found a publisher, sent it in. 2 years later, he contacts me and says, I'd love to publish your chapbook. And I was like, no, not that one. That one sucks. I've moved on from that one. Let's do something else. So he's cool, and he's like, all right, yeah, cool. And so I put together something better, and that came out. And then Go City Press is my next one. I sent to a competition, and there was multiple winners, but I was one of the lucky ones to get picked to win, which was, I never took a second thought to think I was going to win. So, and Kevin, the dude, editor dude, he's really, really cool. And he puts up with me. I've emailed him lots and everything. So, and then Kevin and me's been friends, and I didn't know nothing about, he had a book publication, but someone else was like, he has a book publication, or press or whatever. You should see if he'll publish that as a chapbook. And I was like, okay. And I did, and he liked it, and he is. And then was that all of them? I think so. Yeah. The other one's new poems. So so yeah, that's how each one of them come to be. I've been really lucky, really fortunate. Been pushed. Facebook, I haven't had it all that long, like the end-ish of last year, I don't know. Sometime around the end of last year, I got Facebook, and it's, even though there's a lot of aspects about Facebook I absolutely hate, it has been a good door for me, and has opened a lot of things also.
So the other question that kind of,
Sandra.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to ask, I know that you've done some collaborative work with Juliet Cook, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your process writing with someone. And I also wondered what other writers inspire your work as well.
Ooh, so Juliet is amazing to write with because she's crazy just like me. And and she has really pushed me too because like there's some subjects I would love to write about, but really can't get into. I'm not going to write about something if I can't get it right. And so like we've wrote 3 poems so far together, and one's been published. But it's just one of them is about like a bar fight and dance. It's kind of she's absolutely brilliant and really has let me just go. I haven't been so OCD writing with her because she's just like, how we did it was, one of them was, I had this horrible poem written out and I hated it, absolutely hated it. And I was like, I just can't do nothing with this poem. I was like, you want to try it and see what comes? So then I sent it to her and she wrote like in the middle of everything and everything. So I think that's the one that is being published. And I'm letting her deal with all the publishing thing because I don't want to, I mean, I know I'm a part of it, but I don't want to take any credit because it's a 2-person, it's, 2 people. And so I'm like, I'm just like, you do all that and then I will dance with joy with you. So yeah, it's really hard to explain because she's so open and she just makes it so easy, and her ideas are fun. It's a dance. And the second part of the question was who inspires me. Do you mean like poets who are already published or what?
Oh,
Anything?
yeah.
Okay. So like the 2 talk about growing up. We'll start with growing up first. The 2 that really inspired me were Anne Sexton and Sylvia Plath. I write confessional a lot, and that was my basis. I try to stretch out a little bit to other things, but my home is confessional poetry, because it's easier to write about yourself. And and then I also like Carl Sandburg is awesome because he was he went against the grain of poetry, and that's awesome because even though I like a lot of poetry, I want to be my own. I want to be over here. When someone reads my poetry, even if they hate it, I don't want them to be like, that sounds like, or that reminds me of. I want them to be like, I'm going to remember his name. I hate his poetry. It sucks, but he's stuck with me now. So that's my goal. So that's one thing. And E.E. Cummings, because he didn't care. He even though people like were like, this isn't nothing, he was like, yeah, well, that's your opinion. There's some things I won't get into about his poetry because he was sorry. He lived with his mom for like his entire life, and she gave him an allowance when he was like 50. But his poetry, on the other hand, he was he. But there's so many because I read so much, and there's people I forget about, and there's new people. Oh, and just but the main ones are like, I'm sorry, the older ones, because I read them a lot more than I read new poets now. Like, because within the last 5 years, I've been able to get into this world. So the only thing that's been available to me is them. But now I have a ton, and I gotta read more. I talk about always reading, and I do always read, but usually it's not one book or it's a poem by this person, a poem by that person, and after like 100 poets, you forget some poems until you see them again, and then it flashes back to you. All right.
Awesome. One other question that Karen had is, how did you land on poetry? When and why did you start writing poems?
So in ninth, I believe it was ninth grade, I was really bored. And I was in a science class, and I like watching science. So I don't like doing science. So I was bored. So I started writing in my journal, and someone's like, oh, that's poetry. you're writing really, you're writing poetry. And so I was like, what's poetry? So I started learning. It was 2 days after 9/11 is when I started writing. And so I started reading and looking up, and I was a horrible, horrible poet. Well, oh my God, it was nightmarish. And of course, I'm in the 9th grade, so I think everything I'm writing is a masterpiece. But only until like with it 10 years ago have I started getting better, and within the last like 4 or 5 years ago have I really, I don't know, in tone, like found it. But yeah, 9th grade. So it was 20 years ago. And I burned all of my poems from when I was a teenager and danced around the flames. And then I wrote a poem about it. But there's nothing to be missed with those. They're absolute garbage.
Yeah, but you got a poem out of the whole process. So there's that,
yeah.
JoJo.
Yeah.
Good work. What made you contact Fanny Howe is what Laura was asking. I think there's I like that you reach out to people. I think that's a really beautiful thing, that you like to make connections with people, and then also amongst poets and artists. You like to point out, you might like this person. So that's a nice way to connect other like-minded people.
It's the same way in a sense that I met every poet. I've contacted them, but a long time ago, I like to write letters instead of email. I was not big on technology. I like books instead of ebooks. I like, So I wrote a lot of poets. I can't tell you how many it was because I don't remember, but I know it was more than 10. One wrote me back, Fanny Howe. And so it was just, I used to get Poetry magazine, the poetry, and they've really gone downhill lately. I mean, and it's very disappointed in them. But I have been a subscriber for like a million years. I'm not gonna resubscribe. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to talk trash about them. And it's not this whole political thing that's going on right now. It's just their poems are garbage. That lately their quality has went down. I don't even care about how they don't help anyone. Their poems suck. But so I looked in the back of those books, and because a long time ago they had good poems, and I like the poets. So and so it's like Fanny Howe, and then so it's like she works here. So then I found out the address to the university.
So you're a poet stalker.
Yes, I told you that's what I did.
That's really cool.
So I found out the address to the university where they worked, and I wrote them a letter. And I would always, for the very first, which I don't understand this either, I would always send them a envelope with the stamp on it to write me back. So the first one, they wouldn't even have to pay anything. And Fanny Howe was the only one that wrote back. But I mean, it's okay, because later on, I wrote Ray Armentrout. I hope that's how you pronounce her name. She's absolutely fabulous. I wrote her again, and she finally contacted back. Not only did she love my book, Trainride Elsewhere, there's a poem in there that she wrote a poem, and then I rewrote her poem. And so I contacted her and asked her permission to publish it in my book. Not that I needed it, I don't know, but I wanted her permission. So, and she said, not only she said yes, and not only did she like it, she told me she thought it was better than her original poem. And that was like,
That's awesome.
And unfortunately, I hate that I lost the original email, but she did post a message on my poem I posted recently and tell me she thought it was wonderful again. But that was a big mark in my thing, because she's like won the Pulitzer Prize and every other award imaginable. So when someone of that status tells you, who is like this big, that not only does she love your poem, but she thinks it's better than hers, yeah, I could have died and been happy. So I don't even remember what the original question was. Oh, how do I contact poets? Yeah, that's all. I stalk them. Yeah. But it's worked out. No one's put a restraining order on me, and it's worked out. I wrote, and Carol Forche, I hope that's how you pronounce her name. she was one of them that I wrote also.
Carolyn.
And then recently she messaged me on a message because I wrote and I said there's been 3 poets that have been crucial in my adult life at one point, and I was almost homeless and poor and all that crap, and there was 3 poets: Fanny Howe, always, and Ray Armantrout and Carol Forche, and only recently did she message me back, and I don't mean to, like, I didn't try to put her on point and be like, you know, I've tried to talk to her, but she'd never talk to me, but it worked because she messaged me back.
That's awesome. Clayton wrote, "Aw," and so I think I've hit all the questions. If I have not, please somebody jump in, because I don't. If I missed it on the chat, give you a chance to ask JoJo. And thanks, JoJo. I really like that you're very willing to engage and answer questions.
Well, thank you, and I hope I answered them all. Thank you, everyone. You really make my heart melt. And I'm really excited all you showed up for my reading, and it's been a big honor, because honestly I'm the worst. I figured of course Malaika, sorry I butchered your name. I figured she'd be here, and Sandra, and that was all. that was my goal. 2 people.
Yeah, I was gonna say Malaika's not an easy one, so I'll pretty much respond to anything. You know that.
But yeah, but it's always surprising, and I'm always honored, and I've been like, I haven't really done readings, but I've been posting my poems places and doing, and like poetry boards or whatever, and so I'm always honored and and it really touches me when people like my poems. And now that I'm not saying I'm anywhere near big, but got a little bigger, and now like real poets that are way more, like Megan, and who's being quiet, has you know, when everyone reaches out to me, and I look at them, and then it's just like, it astounds me, because I haven't seen myself in a place where I can be put on a pedestal. And I'm not saying no one puts me on a pedestal, but it feels, when it's humbling, and it makes me speechless, because I write my poems, and then I hope to God people reads them, and then I read their poems, and it just blows me away. And then they read my poems, and they're like, "This is freaking awesome." I'm like, "Have you read your poems? Like, it's nothing compared to your poems." So yeah.
Well, I think that we probably all want a chance to thank you again, JoJo, for reading. You did fantastic. And I know you were saying, I just don't know that I have enough to fill it. You did great.
And sorry I talked for so long.
It was so good. It
So
was
good.
fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Wonderful. So I have 2 people. I've only heard from Joan and Cal that wanted to read. Do we have anybody else?
Ruth, Megan, Sandra, Clayton. I see all you. I know you have poems. Doc.
Hello.
Okay, great. Doc is lifting hands. Anybody else?
Megan,
Oh,
Clayton.
I'm going to take up some space.
Karen wants to read. Christy, Ruth.
Ruth
No.
said she had to go. Clayton said yes. And Megan, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
I'd be happy to read one, but I'm going to take up some space and time next week. So if there's
We would
room-
love to have you read now.
Yeah, read,
We'll call that,
Megan.
you know, the sneak preview.
You're allowed to read everywhere. Hear me?
Awesome. Thank you guys. Okay, so we'll go ahead and get started with Joan, and everybody can mute. And Joan, when you talk, you'll come on.
I'm going to mute myself.
We've got a thunderstorm going on here, which is right for my poem. This is a June poem.
We did last time.
Summer's start. Light deepens the morning world. June's early fire draws up dawn. It's cool before the dew burns off. Mud in the ditch and leaves on the road track last night's storm. The afternoon will be hot. My house is shaded, coddled by woods as I am coddled by solitude. I love this world I yearn to shed. Dusk falls softly into the earth. Light drenches my reawakened life, warms the small planet of my heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. Oh, I love that, the small planet of my heart. Is that in the background? Was that a window? I was trying to see it. Look, yeah. So y'all are having storms too. Yeah. Thank you, Joan. Cal, if you want to read, we'll put you.
Yeah. Okay. Can you hear me okay? This time? All right. Where is it? Okay, this is called Stop Time, and it was published in Visions International magazine, and the title is influenced by the publisher. It means in jazz when a chord is played only on the first beat. Okay, so stop time. To freeze time. A sculpture in a courtyard, a flower pressed in a book, a butterfly flattened behind glass. Why can't we see things without stopping them? Like particles we can't throw light on without changing by a photon's reflection. Do we make them physical when we stop addressing them as points in a flow? Missing certain coordinates, folded in dimensions. We press things flat to understand the smallest bits allowed in our philosophy or science. We call them probabilities, not even a thing we can hold. Words of ink on a page, old photos, eternal is a dead end. Life moves, sparkles in another's eyes, an instant's shared sense of what is, wind on a leaf, rain on a hot tar, touch of a hand, then let go. Thank you.
Thank you, Cal. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Visions International is a great magazine. I have Clayton up next.
Oh yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's been a while since I've been to one of these in person, but yeah, this is nice to do this online. This is almost even more fun. It's neat. This one I wrote a few years ago, and my husband is Korean, and we were in a restaurant, and it came on the news, this headline of the Korean news. So the title of this one is Korean Man Sets Fire to His Neighbor's House. Korean man sets fire to his neighbor's house. Recently in the news, a 60-year-old man set fire to his neighbor's house because his cat was too loud. Of course, it happened in the countryside where people are a little off. One can imagine the endless rice paddies, drone of insects chirping, so free of distraction that any distraction is magnified. In the night, a shrieking scream of an adult tabby male like a forest witch. The rooster would be expected, but the cat on no schedule is unnervingly unpredictable. He asks his neighbor. The neighbor doesn't know where the cat is from, but under her spell, he's made up his mind already. It's his, and he's burning the place down, cat and all. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Clayton. That was awesome. You know, and we, I don't, you know, a lot of times inspiration does come from, you know, something you read. And I know Frank, one of JoJo and I's friends and a poet that, you know, is amazing. He did a book launch, and a lot of his come from just articles that he reads and, you know, just sparks something. So I like that you imagined, you know, what would have occurred, what would have possessed, and put yourself in that place. Megan, I have you next. Yay.
Hi. All right. I'm very excited for next week, by the way. I hope you guys can make it. That would be great. I'm going to read from my latest book that was released in the beginning of April next week. So it was a pandemic baby, I guess we shall call it. But I'll share a newer poem. I haven't really been writing much recently. I did take an eco-poetics class through Poetry Barn. I don't know if anyone's familiar, but it was a really great experience. And so this poem kind of came from that environment. It's called The Butterfly Effect. A first butterfly appears. It is Earth Day. I'm on the second story, perched, eye level, as if I too might fly. But we have been shut down for weeks. I tell my son about the day I balanced at the rim of the septic field, violet blooms summoning wings, how I held my breath, extended an arm, maintained that length until a monarch glanced my skin. A split second. I was afraid that contact might brush its scales, add another injury to admiring beauty. Now, we hold each other at a distance that someone measured safe. It is so ingrained that I am scrubbing touch, even in dreams. Last night, I tucked my son along my hip, alert to the shifts in his brain, seizures flickering his screen of sleep. I woke 1,000 times knowing he was close. I need to know if there is a way to measure the tremors of want echoing through us all. What fault lines we are deepening, what rifts. Skin hunger is real, my friend explains, as a neighbor revs loud machinery that raises branches into mulch. Splinters and dust fume the air, sparks that might lead to a wildfire. He is clearing brush to make a defensible space. When we talk about touch, it does not include the syllables of displacement, if more than not having will be what remains.
Wow. There was so much that I was writing down with that one, Megan. My daughter has a seizure disorder, so much of what you were writing, I was like, oh, that sense and that sensitivity, that was amazing.
Thank you.
I'm hoping you sent that out. I probably should have asked, is it okay if I was recording that?
Mm-hmm.
Good, I wanted to make sure beforehand. All right. Thank y'all so very much. If there is, I think people want to unmute and go ahead and clap. That was a powerful open mic. I just want to thank everybody for, you know, sharing. And JoJo for getting, kickstarting the whole thing.
Excellent. Thank you all.
Wow.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you, Joan and Laura and Karen and Clayton and Cal and Sandra and JJ and Doc and Megan for coming, and Christy too.
Tonight was awesome.
It was
Thank
awesome.
Being so welcoming, JoJo.
Yes.
You deserve it.
Oh,
It was
thank
great.
you.
This is your party.
Yes.
Yeah.
Guys,
Yeah, well, you
I was
know,
putting it everywhere. We're gonna have a party. We're gonna have
And
so
next
much
week-
fun.
I
Yeah,
hope
why not?
everybody is here for next week because, you know, like Megan was saying and like JoJo and myself, it is hard to have a pandemic baby. A book of poems is hard enough, but one coming out when all your book launches and readings are canceled is particularly hard. But I have to say this, you know, I have thoroughly enjoyed this Thursday, and I look forward to each one because each one has
Yeah.
just been a lifesaver. So thank you all for
Thank you for doing it.
making
Thank
it
you,
such an
Malaika.
amazing experience to
It's
be
so
in
great.
community with one another. So thank you.
Hey, before we go, John, how do we get in touch with you about getting your books?
Yeah.
Are we friends on Facebook?
I think we are, and if not, JoJo Compton or harass Malaika. She knows me.
Yeah, I was gonna say, get in touch with me and I'll connect you.
If
If you
you're
can't
friends
find
with
them.
her, get in
And
touch
I'm
with
taking
her.
y'all to
We'll
see
find
my
them.
babies.
Okay.
Oh yes.
Oh,
They were
I can't.
hatched last week.
I didn't see it.
Let's see.
Oh,
What are they?
One
I
of
love
9.
'em.
Oh,
One of 9. They were hatched last week, so
Oh, fun.
they're already feathering up.
Aw.
Yay. All right, guys. Be well.
This was awesome. Thank you,
Okay.
everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
See you
everyone.
next
Thank you
week.
for
Good
reading.
night.
I had so much fun.
Appreciate
You
your
did
putting
I
this
had
on.
fun.
thank you, JoJo.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Good to see you, everybody.
Good to see you too.
Bye, guys.
All right.
Bye.
Let's just keep partying.